Now, please join me in welcoming the moderator of our next panel, SVP of Marketplace Development at Rubicon Project, Jay Sears.
All right, thank you very much. So we're going to talk about automation of a lot of areas outside of the core digital today. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and introduce the esteemed panelists we have up here. And then we're going to dive in. We're going to cover different topic areas. And then we'll end the 45 minutes with some word games and word association that I know all of you love. So I'm going to start to my immediate left and just tell you about Brendan Condon. He's the CEO of Admore. Now, Admore was recently bought by Canela Response, a big player in DRTV. But Admore is an interesting evolution of a business that Brendan was running called RevShare. And he's basically used Nielsen to create a product that's very attractive to national brand advertisers. Okay? He also has a long-standing career prior to that across the Time Warner enterprise, including running AOL in Europe. Next to Brendan is Scott Stansfield at Centriply. Scott calls Centriply the complete DSP for advanced TV addressability. So there was a predecessor company called CableScope in 1989 that Scott started leading. And really what we're talking about here is hyper-local targeting across linear television. So someone who's used data in linear television for a long time. And he started his career as a local cable rep at CNI. If we keep going down, Scott Wells, he's the CEO of Clear Channel Outdoor Americas. Okay? CEO since 2015, but a director since 2008. So had eyes on it while he was an operating partner at Bain, and now you're in deep. So, all right. And then John Partilla at Screen Vision, the CEO there. Now, John's worked on all sides, I think. You could conduct a negotiation kind of with yourself, I think.
Yeah, it still survives.
So he was CEO of the Olsen Group before Screen Vision, the cinema player. Now, that was the third largest independent agency that John was successfully sold to ICF International, and prior stints at Dentsu and Time Warner, okay, as well as places like Young and Rubicon. Now, my friend Michael Strober here at the end, EVP of Client Strategy and Ad Innovation at Turner Ignite. So what you need to know about Turner Ignite is that's the place you're seeing a lot of the innovation. They're thinking about how audience targeting comes to national broadcast, and Michael's right in the center of that. And he's been with Turner for quite the duration with a stint to start his own company as well, an interactive company. Okay, now I'm going to start the conversation, and Brendan, I'll start with you, and then let's go down the line. If a book has 10 chapters, what chapter are we on with TV, out-of-home, video everywhere, automation? So tell us what chapter we're on.
Okay, well, first, I love the idea of a 10-chapter book. That means it's relatively small and thin, right? So we can get through it somewhat quickly. I think about television automation and reaching targeted audiences. We're probably in chapter 3, chapter 4. And that's somewhat early in the stages because as you read many books, you have the prologue or the introduction to what programmatic is. And I think in the space, we're spending a lot of time educating consumers and especially media buyers and the agencies and the trading desks about what that platform is or what it can be. And then it migrates from education into usage and automating workflows. And once you have automated workflows, you're in chapter 2, maybe 3 or 4, and you start to take it from there.
All right, Scott Stansfield at Centriply, you already leverage a lot of data in your business. What chapter are we on in this 10-chapter book?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. We're early in the book. I would say chapter 3 is the way I would look at it. You know, there are a couple of just steps that need to to take place as we go through it. But first, the getting inventory and descriptions and metadata into some kind of a digital format would maybe be chapter 1. And learning how to apply metadata would be, I think, chapter 2. And I think here we are, chapter 3, where, early days of high capacity decision making at a very granular level. And it's if we can replicate with a machine at scale the kind of work that's been done in the TV industry to date and get the similar result, then we're starting to actually replace the decision making at the granular level, which is the benefit. We want to do that. Media professionals want to look at the landscape and direct large-scale operations. It's being the PC jockey isn't a lot of benefit.
Scott Wells from Out of Homeland, where are we in this book?
Well, I think I have to speak from the grounds of results in terms of how much of our revenue is coming through this channel. So I'd say we're in chapter 1, probably using some of the concepts that others have framed. We're in the late stages of chapter 1 where we're actually applying data to our inventory. We are trading a small volume that way, and certainly are working on new avenues to get in. But I think just realistically, we're in the early stages.
Okay, JP, how about cinema advertising? What's going on at
Yeah,
Screen
I
Vision?
think I'd agree with Scott. I think that the overall industry is in chapter 2 or 3, and we're probably in chapter 1. We're still putting some toes in the water and getting a feel. We think it's a good thing and it's a trend that's here to stay, but we also feel that all impressions are not created equally, and we're being careful with our premium inventory and taking a measured approach.
I guess I'm a slow reader. I would say we're in the very early pages of the first chapter when it comes to national linear television.
Yeah.
And to John's point, I think there's so much at stake that a measured approach is the right approach, because programmatic and digital is much different and will behave much differently in national linear television.
That's right, yeah. I was going to say, I feel like we're at the very beginnings of an early draft of the book and deciding whether it's going to be kind of an action story with lots of crashes and violence, or a drama, or just a love story between advertisers and media owners and consumers. But
Well, can I make a small point about that? Which
Yeah.
is, if you say, okay, if it's a 10-chapter book, what is the 10th chapter likely to be about? And I'll just prognosticate here, and maybe this is a contrarian view, that I think there is a role for science, right, and where we're going with more efficiency in the marketplace. But there's, I believe, always a role for the art, and art in lots of dimensions, including the personal selling, because I think that ultimately marketers always need to advantage themselves or differentiate themselves. And if everything's a level playing field through machines, then how do you win? And so I think it's always that blend of art and science. And so I still think when you get to chapter 10, we're going to see more efficiency and more programmatic, but by no means is my view that will be the dominant force out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you might not be using the term programmatic any longer because it's in our vernacular. It's just a way of doing business.
Yeah.
The differentiator becomes.
that'll just be a sign maybe of our success and the market maturing into it.
Yeah.
Let me change the topic, and I want to provide a contrast to the experience in digital and talk about who controls the creation of value when we think about the automation as it comes to television and out-of-home and cinema. And one of the things that happened in digital, at least with the auction market or the RTB market, I think it's safe to argue that the creation of value tilted in the favor of the advertiser. And we've seen it swing back a little bit with our orders, our private market, back to the media owner. But Michael Strober, let me talk with you, because you have some real conviction about this. And when you think about national linear, who does create that value?
It's very important, and it is dear to my heart because I want to stay employed. If you look at digital programmatic, it started really to help organize and make the transaction easier for the buyers. And they had access to insight and knowledge on their audiences that most publishers weren't aware of. In linear television, there's such a finite amount of linear television inventory available that we have to really, we have to understand the audience that the marketer's interested in. And jointly, I think the value could be shared, But we have to understand who that audience is, because for us, the decision on which is the proper placement for the inventory, again, keep in mind, national linear television is not addressable. It's not IP delivered. So we still have to use it, one unit that goes out to many audiences. What we're trying to do is just get a higher concentration, more precision of that unit. But we have to make decisions between whether I use that unit for an audience targeting unit, or for a Nielsen guarantee, or for a promo unit, or for UD. So there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, and we need to have full knowledge of what the audience that the
Okay, so your answer is media owner. Brendan, at Admore, I mean, who controls the value?
It's decidedly the media owner as well. And with Admore, we're aggregating about 1,200 unique media outlets, from locally owned and operated broadcast television all the way up through to the national broadcasters, cable networks, and the like. Each one of them have incredibly valuable viewers. And in our role is to aggregate that value of viewers, because some of those players are so small that they don't get a seat at the table. But yet, when you get an ad in front of those TV viewing consumers, they're incredibly important to national brand marketers.
Okay, and Scott Stansfield at Centralply, you have a different view in terms of the advertiser really needing to call some of the shots.
Right. Well, our role is, we're a demand-side actor, so we work for the marketer or for the agency, and we use data to identify inventory that it's not undervalued in the marketplace, but rather for our particular advertiser, our advertiser gleans greater value. So we're assigning not a utility value inherent to the inventory, but rather we're saying utility value for this particular advertiser. So where our advertiser can buy inventory at market and gain an advantage because of their particular need, that's value to the marketer. At the same time, we're not trying to drive down prices and programmatically skim up remnant inventory after sale date. So long term, it's value to the publisher sell side as well, because we're picking up inventory and it raises the value of the pool of inventory, but not in the specific transaction.
Okay, and Scott Wells, you said a bifurcated answer. So where are you coming down?
I'm a big believer in demand and supply.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
The reality is, like national linear television, we have scarce inventory. We have finite inventory, and I firmly believe that different parts of our inventory will behave differently in how the transaction works. It needs to be a win for the advertiser. It needs to be a win for the media owner. And we'll certainly, in our case, we have lots of other partners, the landowners that, and the cities and municipalities that are all very interested as well. So I think it will be a bifurcated answer.
That's right. Okay. And JP, you said ultimately by demand, really.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's just funny that Scott had led into that. I think it's always context, right, or environment that dictates a lot. And so if there's scarcity, I think the media owner or publisher is a little more in control. And if it's a little looser in terms of what's out there and supplies more plentiful, then I think the media buyer is going to have a lot more leverage in how they're exacting the relationship.
Okay. Let's change the topic. I want to talk about measurement and currency and maybe some of the differences between the two. And Scott Wells, maybe I'll start with you with Clear Channel and Out of Home. So Tab, that's just been rebranded Geopath,
yeah.
Right? You and I had an interesting discussion in that there's some reinvention of Geopath as a baseline currency with Out of Home, but you also talked about how there needs to be almost room for innovation on top of it, and some of the things you're doing with Radar. So tell me a little bit about that.
I think it's a really important concept, and it's pretty consistent across other media as well, that you have kind of a base currency that everybody can agree on, that everybody can rely upon. That's the role that Geopath plays in our industry. They're in the midst of a big transformation where they're bringing it from being very point-in-time oriented, where it didn't get updated very often, to being much closer to real time. That's a big transition they're going through. I think it's important for us to then be able to layer things on top of that, different types of insights on audiences, and different media owners are going to have different takes at this in terms of figuring out different ways to enable different first-party, second-party, third-party data mixed in with it. So it's really important. It's really important for us to have compatibility within Out of Home, but then also across into the other media as well, so that people can plan with confidence.
Yeah, good. All right, and across other media, JP, I want to go to you because I feel like cinema is, you live in these worlds that cross over to television and Out of Home and digital. And so how do you
Yeah.
and the sales force that has to go, fight the cause, how do you think about
Yeah, it's such a great topic, so I'll only take 20 or 30 minutes on this.
All right, good.
No, and it's funny that I'm sitting between Scott and Michael, which is symbolic of this conversation a little bit. I think that cinema traditionally lived a little bit in the out-of-home space. And we do still to some degree, and that's a great space to be in because of obviously the size of the screen and the impact and so on. But we also have this other thing going for us, which is this tremendous engagement, which video has. And so we're trying to reframe the conversation a little bit around our asset, around the most premium of premium video, or the most premier of premium video, in that ability to be very unique and differentiating and engaging in a marketer mix. Having said that, again, echoing what Scott said, we do need some common metrics and translations ability to be able to sell our platforms to scale in sometimes a more efficient marketplace. But we don't want to lose sight, again, of that distinctive value in the marketing mix that we think that we have the most impact and engagement that's out there. But I'll end that soliloquy by saying that's a good reason for us to put toes in the water around programmatic.
Right.
Because if you feel you have something very distinctive and unique in the mix, then you want to democratize that, and you don't want to feel too nervous that you can be substituted so easily. We think we're pretty distinctive. And so it's a good reason for us to jump into that fray.
Yeah, okay. Scott Stansfield at Centralply, when we were talking, it was interesting because you were saying you thought there'd be a wider array, maybe, of some of these currencies and measurements over time. So we started talking about Nielsen, but very quickly we were talking about a company called TrueOptic that does, over-the-top audience identification. So more and more like a proliferation of these over time, depending on the situation, or?
Yeah, I think Nielsen's been kind of the currency of TV for time out of mind. TrueOptic's an entrant. There are also some players in the smart TV world. Obviously, set-top box data came into play a number of years ago. So in the role on the marketer side, we're trying to find inventory and value of inventory. So we don't necessarily want to settle on one tool because not every tool is proper for each project. But I think there's going to be a proliferation. In terms of the currency concept, though, in our view, the common currency is not a requirement for the conversation, the engagement, and the transaction. For the transaction, we need to know the inventory and how much it is and what it costs. But we don't need to share a currency between the demand side and the sell side. And part what we do is we create a currency unique to the advertiser, and that's really the advertiser's perspective.
Okay, and is that because the value is relative to the individual advertiser? You're advocating for that advertiser, you determine the value.
Right,
Check the box.
and it's not just, yes, exactly, and it's not just advertising, but it's communication objective. So one advertiser may have a different value assigned to a given piece of inventory depending on the communication package. And we're not looking at unique individual units. We put together a portfolio of inventory to communicate a package, and so the inventory changes its value depending on where it slots into the overall portfolio.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to do a minute with Brendan, and then Michael Strober, I'm going to finish with you. But Brendan, you guys made a big bet with Nielsen. I mean, you took all this fragmented, these 1,200 spots where you're sourcing all this television inventory, tied it together with Nielsen. It's turned out really well for you. At the same time, you said, hey, I have a Rentrack contract on my desk. So what happens over time?
Well, over time, if you think about how many dollars are being spent, these marketers, these agencies have to be reassured that they're reaching those targeted audiences. And they need somebody in the space that's measuring it, that they can survive an audit. And we've seen this in the digital with fraudulent behavior. We're seeing it. The Journal had a great article over the weekend about these concerns in the marketplace. And for us, it was, let's do a survey. Let's talk to everybody who's spending money. Mm-hmm. And the underlying theme was, well, if you've got Nielsen, you're fine. Like, fine is okay. We call it the bronze standard at Nielsen. It's just, it works, and it gives everybody a comfort level. I have Rentrack, like you say, a contract sitting on my desk, but I'm not getting the demand for that. They're fine with Nielsen, so I'm fine with it. Mm-hmm. If the marketplace shifts, and I don't expect it to, even with all these smaller startups out there, we're not going to change unless the market dramatically changes with it.
Okay. So Strober, help us finish here. When we talked, you said, well, I've got linear measurement, like your Nielsen, your Rentrack, your TRA, but then I've got this behavioral, attitudinal audience data, and describe CAE,
Yeah,
and what this is and how you're leveraging it.
So we have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So, well, first, let me step back. I think one of the things that we are, as an industry, need to focus on greatly is the quality of the data that we're using as well as measurement. So I know we talked about measurement. As far as data, which I think was your question, Jay, in order for audience targeting to work in linear television, you need two sets of data. You need viewership data, which could come in the form of set-top box data, Nielsen, it can be compiled with RentTrack. And then you need some type of behavioral or attitudinal data. And those two data sets need to be integrated and fused. Now what's happening, and we're finding a lot of times, is people are starting to combine data sets that weren't really created for linear television. They were created for digital, and they're fusing them, or they're integrating them, and you're getting these Franken data sets, which is frightening. But I think that's really important, though, is that most marketers and agencies have to really understand the data that they're using when they're identifying an audience target, and then we ask them, because we want to be data agnostic. We'll use whatever data set a client asks to use. But they need to understand the perils if not using the proper data when they're building it. Now, what CAE is a proprietary algorithmic model that Turner has built that allows us to forecast audiences. As I said before, TV is a futures market. It's not like digital. It doesn't behave digital, where you have an impression each time somebody comes to your site. We have to estimate our audiences the same way you do when we sell on Nielsen guarantees. So CAE allows us to ingest any data set using any audience target a client cares about, and it does an estimate for every half hour of every day of the week for the entire TV ecosystem.
Okay, say that again so people listen. For the entire TV ecosystem.
Right, because we have to. Because in order to do an audience target, it's a consumer choice model. Consumer has a choice when they tune in on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock what they want to watch. So not only do we do it just for the Turner properties, the brands, but we have to do it and look at the schedule across the entire linear ecosystem, because that's how we're figuring out which audiences we expect will tune in at that half hour of that day.
Okay. So CAE is competitive audience estimation, just so everybody understands. Right. And tell me, I asked you when we were talking about how this really looks at the entire linear spectrum, I said, well, hey, how often internally do you guys say, hey, maybe we should productize this and roll it out to the greater market? And what did you say to me?
We are absolutely considering that. There's no question. I think what we want to do is just provide more rigor, accreditation, and just going through the process and having it audited, just so that we feel more confident before we make it widely available. But we use it right now. It's been fueling all of our audience targeting solutions now for the better part of 3 years. And we're seeing is each year, more and more advertisers are coming to us. We have two solutions, Audience Now and Targeting Now, in the market, and it's working, and we're being very transparent. We do believe that as much as this is important for Turner, we have to get the entire ecosystem to come together and create standards and platforms. And if CAE can contribute to that, that's something we're very interested in.
Yeah, good. Okay. I'm going to change the topic again, and we're going to talk for a few minutes about where innovation starts in television or out-of-home or cinema. And if we look in digital, it really started at point of transaction. That was really the facility, the real-time bidded facility, really changed the dynamic. And then all of us in digital land are working super hard to work backwards into the enterprise, into planning, into the rest of it. Okay, so let's see, who do I want to start with here? I think maybe Scott Weld, I'm going to start with you, with out-of-home too, because in terms of hierarchy of needs, I think we talked about workflow was at the top of your list, but.
Well, it's always been a challenge in out-of-home to transact, because you're dealing with lots of discrete inventory locations distributed around the country with different amounts of data associated with them. Our digital product, we've got about 1,100 digital signs around the country, large format digital signs. It's straightforward. We can run that through our digital operations center, and we can execute on the printed signs, which make up the vast majority of our locations. You're talking about something where you're actually needing to work through that transaction. And so a lot of what we've been investing in has been getting all of our systems, if you sort of take the steps of a transaction and getting it to the point where you can API link into our various partners, whatever platforms they're working on, so that we're able to actually transact with them. It's kind of a necessary first step before we can actually get to the programmatic future for that part of the inventory.
Yeah, and one of the things that Scott said to me I thought was really interesting is you said, well, half of our employees are installers. And we talked about innovation really happen. We all talk about innovation, digital this, automate, and data impression level. But really a lot of the innovation in your business is happening outside the digital screens. And how can you innovate there?
It has to, and one of the big things that we need to do in that space is get faster. And so the industry promise right now on getting signs up is 5 days. So within the start of your campaign, you're going to have 100% of the signs up and proof of performance in 5 days. We've got to do a lot better than that. So that is where we're doing a lot of innovation in terms of the tools that they're using for scheduling their days and taking the pictures when they get the signs up, those sort of things.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so JP, let's do screen vision next. The kind of top need you talked about was yield optimization.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that even when we talk about programmatic, I think it's starting to mean different things to different people, and it's definitely evolving. So first of all, here's things that we really like about it. The fungibility up to a point where dollars can move across premium video as long as you're distinctive in what you're representing. We like that it's evolving towards audience or one-to-many, which is great. And then I think the third element that we're really looking at a lot, or driver of this, is this dynamic yield, which is, I think some people think of programmatic, and maybe if this was chapter 1, it was a little more of the sort of the bottom of the barrel remnant. That's right. Being placed, and that was good, but it didn't do a whole lot to excite people.
Right.
Yield, though, is the best metaphor is just your Uber, right, on a rainy day. And, you're swiping and everybody's happy because, the driver's making a little more money, but you're glad to have a car right there on a rainy day. And that's what we're getting interested in, which is the ability to dynamically serve, particularly around local parts of our segment, which is sometimes not as in demand for us as our national. And so that creates a nice bit of tension.
Okay, so we got workflow, yield. I think you guys are going to wind up in the same bucket, but Scott Stansfield, planning for you?
Yeah, that's where we do a lot of our challenges. And I'm going to borrow Michael's term. I think Frankendata is something that we bump up against, because we're trying to give an objective view of how different media channels can fit together for an overall package. And it's as much as everyone's trying to get the right kind of metrics to put it together, you can hit that when you're trying to bring them to a common overview if the data sources are not properly understood. And so it's that kind of almost process at planning is the challenge.
Planning,
which is part of the workflow, right? It's the first phase, excuse me, so that if you think about it from that perspective, you have to have automation and innovation in the planning stage that flows right through to the actual execution and delivery.
Okay, and Turner, we talked about your hierarchy of needs really starting with data.
Yeah, I think, it's not sexy, but TV is a very efficient way to buy media in its current form. And what we're looking at, though, is the leverage of data and insight into our audiences beyond just age, gender, that could allow and unlock more value, to John's point, that we know could provide really, mutual value both to the marketer because it gives them more precision, and they could spend less out of pocket because they're getting more of the intended audience that they want. And it's better for us as a publisher, as a network, because there is more value in our audience than just women 18 to 49. And bringing that to the surface, I think, is highly important. And then right below data, I think, is analytics. And I think this is where, again, CAE plays in that space, but really having done the proper science to understand how to interpret the data and then estimate your audiences across your portfolio or across the landscape, I think is really important. It doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all. Each media company, Viacom's out there, they have their solution, NBCU. So everyone's creating their own set of analytics, and that's fine. They can have their secret sauce. Where I think there needs to be common agreement, though, is when a marketer says, I want to use this particular data, and we all should be using the same data set.
Right, got it, okay. So a really interesting contrast in terms of hierarchy of needs for each of these companies, and I hope all of you appreciate that. I want to change the topic again, and I'm going to ask, if we're living in a tale of two cities where Google and Facebook win and we all end up fighting over the scraps. And maybe one of you guys will have fun with this, just given some of the Facebook headlines and other things recently. Scott Wells, I'll start with you because you talked about P&G and some things they've done recently. But how do you view it? Do you get, as an outdoor operator, do you get this question often?
You know, we serve a different function than either of those players. And so I don't, you know, we're a relatively small part of the media mix in the United States, outdoor is. And we look at actually both Facebook and Google as really important partners and really important, you know, assets for us. We'd love to get some access to some of their data. So
I'm not sure they would love to give it to you.
No, I'm pretty sure they're not. I'm pretty sure they're not headed that direction. But from our point of view, we're not concerned that we're just going to end up fighting for the scraps. We think that there's enormous value in the audiences that our signage delivers, and that what we need to do is we need to figure out how to communicate that value in a way that advertisers and marketers embrace and believe in. So it's not something I'm particularly troubled about.
Okay. Michael Strober, what happens in this theoretical world where wake up one morning and Google has bought the rights to the stream NFL games? You know, what happens to linear TV?
It keeps going. I mean, it's certainly, you know, we've seen Yahoo get involved with this, and there was some confusion around the audience that they delivered in viewing that.
Okay.
Listen, TV has been around. It's proven. Clients know when they buy television, you know, premium video, that they get results. And I think you're starting to see the pendulum switch back, I think, in favor of television once again. I know it's always been at the core of most of the media planning, but again, it's been around for so long. It's a workhorse for most media plans and their budgets. People are interested to hear and do what they can with Facebook and Google. But at the core of it, we know that television still delivers, and it's measured, and it's not wrought with fraud, and there's a lot of value in buying that. And if we can now add another dimension to it where we're getting into audience targeting and bringing new data, I think it's a renaissance for television. So we're not as concerned of what happens.
I just have a funny little moment. I was sitting with Michael as we were all getting ready to come on the stage, and Michael whispers in my ear, he goes, you know, we're competing with Carolyn Everson. And I thought, you know, I sagely said back, yes, we all are in this industry, aren't we? You know, Facebook. And he goes, no, I mean,
she was
right now she's presenting in the other room. And I was like, oh, got it. So thank you all for being here.
Yeah.
But
there we go. We're still getting our share.
You're right. Like, we are all competing against Facebook at the top. It is a tale of two cities. No, I think that it's look, I think you have to. It's a little bit of judo, right? You have to look what you can take from each other, and I think, as Scott and Michael said, there are things there to pay attention to in terms of their data and their analytics and the way they're connecting in a one-to-one way at great scale. Having said that, there are also great advantages we have if we can work with the marketplace and our own advantages. We have this wonderful thing called engagement, right? Impact.
Right.
We have environment. We have context.
Yep.
And that is something they do not have right now.
Big screens.
Big screens, exactly, and size. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot we have going for us if we can understand, you know, where to work with it and where to firmly plant our differentiation. So.
Okay. All right. Good.
I don't see it as a tale of two cities either.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good. Well, I like that. Okay. Next topic is transparency. So, big, broad topic in the marketplace: transparency, media costs on data, on inventory, and the question about whether transparency should be a negotiated benefit between two parties or just assumed. And Brendan, maybe I'll start with you with Admore. You said transparency is a two-edged sword, so tell us about each edge.
Yeah, so from my perspective, you need to have full transparency related to who's watching the programs, when the programs are being run, when the ads are being served, so that as a marketer you get this comfort level in terms of saying, okay, this is what I'm paying for, I'm getting this value. Whether or not Admore or any of us here on the panel are making money on the, delivering those advertisements for those marketers should be a non-existent concern for them, because either we're doing it and making money, but we're delivering the audiences that you're paying at a market value, or we're not, or we're subsidizing, or we're making some kind of economic choice. But it shouldn't be the construct around whether or not to work with a partner, as long as you're getting on the back to the other side of the sword the insights and the value and the auditable results that you're paying for.
All right, Scott Stansfield, you said to me when we were talking before this, you said full transparency through the value chain is impractical and unattainable. So you're very clear. So where does it go from here? What's the...
Yeah, so, where the different pieces come together that constitute a media campaign, if you drill down and drill down and drill down, you become overwhelmed with information that's really useless. And speak to Brendan's point, it's critical that the marketer understands where the impressions were occurring, when and how, to the extent possible. That transparency is absolutely critical because you don't have a learning process. If you don't know, if you run a campaign and it worked, you want to know what you did so you can make it work better the next time. So you absolutely do need that kind of transparency. But trying to drill down to all the different players that put pieces together, in the linear space you can maybe attempt to do that. If you just look at the digital space, it's impossible. There's so many hands to so that it's not an inherent component that one should strive for just because it's there.
Okay, fair enough. Scott Wells, what's your view on transparency?
I think that it should be, transparency is something that the relationship between the advertiser, the agency, the media owner is one that not everybody's actually talking to each other. And so I agree that it's pretty impractical in terms of having perfect information along the chain. But I think it's incredibly important that advertisers are paying attention to where their money's going and setting up. It all goes back to delivering the value to the audience that they're trying to buy.
Yeah. Okay. And JP, you've worked on all sides of this.
I have.
So how does it? Where are we today on?
Yeah, it's a very complicated word, right? Because it means many different things to many people, and I think. I could sit here and say, okay, we would all agree that I think people want to know to some degree that if someone claims that ad is being viewed for a certain amount of time, that is being viewed for a certain amount of time. And everyone would nod their head and say, well, that should be, and there should be transparency around that. And then others would say, well, how much of that do you open up? Do you say, if people run their media platform as their own business and they need to do certain things to it to manage how they earn a profit? Others would say, well, they have that agreement between themselves and the client, and they're as transparent as they need to be. Right. And so it's certainly not a simplistic answer. I think that this is a little bit like, as people used to define pornography, you sort of know it when you see it, what's wrong and what's right. And I think you have to be guided by true grounded ethics and values around the relationship. And there's a different definition and context in this value chain between each, let's say, buyer and seller.
So really build trust between the parties and go from there. Yeah. And Michael Strober, when we talked, you really went back, I think, to Franken data in transparency about kind of the quality of some of those elements and making sure everybody understands.
Yeah, it's really it's education. I think. I mean, we are pivoting our business in linear television largely. I mean, we've seen a lot of the folks that came in from the digital side are more comfortable understanding data sets. But when you work with national linear buyers and work with the even at the client sometimes, it's important that we go through this process of education and helping them understand some of the implications. I mean, just one example, Nielsen will calibrate their panel so that if somebody drops out, it is still weighted evenly. But in digital, if somebody drops out or it comes from another set when you do the next survey, it's not being calibrated. And so you have these gross over and under estimates in the universe estimates. So it's just getting more and more people knowledgeable and understanding what's going on and being upfront about it.
Okay, good. So we're going to run out of time, so we're going to switch to word games. Okay, so what I'm going to do is first we're going to do some yes or no questions. And Brendan, I'm going to start with you. We're going to run down the line, just a yes or no. That's all that we want, just a yes or no. So the first one, the first statement is video everywhere. So when I say video everywhere, that's encompassing TV, cinema, out of home. Video everywhere automation will take 5 years. Yes or no?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
The answer is no. Okay. Video everywhere automation will take 10 years.
No.
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 The answer is yes.
We're not very good
I
at this,
did this
are
with
we?
you guys already. Google will remain a dominant company for the next 10 years.
Yes.
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 Vehement agreement, I would say yes too. Google has a current impact on TV or video everywhere spend, and it's becoming greater. Michael, you want to start?
I would say yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I would say yes as well. Michael, I'll start with you again. Facebook will remain a dominant company for the next 10 years.
You asked me on this once on the panel. I would have to say, with a qualifier, yes.
All right, no qualifiers.
No
All right,
qualifiers
yes or no?
allowed.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 No.
MySpace.
Okay, that
So
sounds
no.
like a no.
Yes.
All right, my answer is no. All right. Facebook has a current impact on TV or video everywhere spend, and that impact will become greater over time. Strober, go ahead.
Yes.
No.
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 No. All right.
Wow.
Okay, let's do some finish the sentences. So I'm going to say the start of the sentence, and then you guys each finish the sentence. Just a sentence, not 3 sentences. All right. Strober, I'll start with you. The impact of the ANA transparency study on ad holding companies will be
Something that's going to be discussed for some time.
okay, long discussions. All right, JP.
Become increasingly complex.
All right, complexity.
We'll add sand to the gears of transactions.
All right, sand in the wheels.
Will be minimal.
Minimal. Okay.
Will have missed its point because it didn't name names.
All right, and I would say it's an opportunity for innovation and reinvention. All right, Brendan, I'll start with you. If data-driven advertising was a celebrity, she or he would be. Come on.
Oh, God, who do I know as a celebrity? Kim Kardashian.
I like Radar O'Reilly.
Radar O'Reilly.
Robert Downey Jr.
All right, throwing chairs.
Benedict Cumberbatch. Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah,
Batch.
Cumberbatch, yeah.
There you go.
Geez, that's a tough one. I guess perhaps Madonna.
Madonna. Okay, all right. I was going to say Janet Yellen.
She's a
You know,
celebrity?
you listen really carefully, and you have no idea what actually it means.
That makes me question all the answers. Are we correct that you
Yeah.
are the judge?
Okay, all right. Oh, boy, all right. Okay, yes or no? Brendan, start with you. Forecasting audience is going to be the arms race of the future. Yes or no? Forecasting audience.
Yes.
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 No.
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 All right, the answer is yes.
I would argue
Programmatic
attribution of
is
results.
programmatic is a term with negative connotations for many television executives. Brandon.
Yes.
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 All right, I say yes. All right, and then just some word associations as we kind of wind down here. So I'll just say a word, one word in response. We got to keep on pace here so we get these people out of here. Comcast, Strober.
Trying.
Monolithic.
Video.
It's Comcastic.
Cable giant.
All right, I would say tentacles. All right, Nielsen.
Questioned.
Yeah.
All right, two. That's 2 words. All right.
Yeah. Slow.
Slow. Okay.
Ubiquitous.
Standard bearer.
Measurement.
All right, I would say 800 pounds. All right, ComScore Rentrack. ComScore Rentrack.
Emerging.
Dynamic.
Challenger.
Opportunity.
Possibility.
All right, I would say less than 800 pounds. Okay. Snapchat.
Rising star.
Evolving.
Fun.
What?
Fad.
All right, Challenger. The ANA transparency study. Brendan, you start.
Missed.
Missed.
Off target.
Opening round.
Unsurprising.
Disruptive.
Okay, I would say opportunity. Walled gardens, Michael.
Bad.
Swimming against the tide.
Challenging.
Safety.
Myopic.
All right, I would say Berlin 1989.
That's 2 words.
That's true. All right, Media Ocean are other agency enterprise systems. Michael Strober.
Archaic.
Intriguing.
Ubiquitous. It's my word of the day.
Hold back.
Potential.
All right, I would say fossil. Facebook, Michael Strober.
Frenemy.
Global.
Baby pictures.
Fad.
MySpace.
All right, there you go. Walled garden. All right, and we're going to finish it with Google. One word, Michael Strober.
Giant.
Behemoth.
Powerful.
Dominant.
Cool.
All right, diabolical. All right, everybody say thank you to the panel.
He's great.
That was fun. That was a good, yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, got us, yeah.